Welcome to the first QB List live stream of the season. Tonight, we're going to be doing one of everyone's favorite August activities, and that is drafting a fantasy football team. There's nothing better this time of year, especially when you're drafting a team that doesn't count for anything, means nothing, and we'll all forget about entirely after tonight. That is the fun of mock drafts, and we're going to be doing one tonight. We've got 12 of QB List's best and brightest here tonight to draft, and also me. I'll be hosting this. I'm Myles Nelson, co-host of the QB List Fantasy Football Podcast. But more importantly than me, for sure, the people actually drafting. So today, here with us, we're going to have three of the members who are in this draft live to talk about their picks, talk about their draft strategy. So drafting us with us today, we have Erik Smith, editor-in-chief of QB List, and the man behind all the rankings. So if you have an issue with them, this is the guy that you need to be bugging. Erik, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. Ready for this mock. I just realized I need to set my queue, so I'm throwing names in the queue as we speak. So getting prepared, ready for a draft. Thanks for having me.
Dedicated to the game. I love it. You absolutely need to have a clean queue when drafting, because the last thing that you want to do is have it be your pick and have no idea what you're doing. And you definitely don't want to, all right, perfect, I'm throwing in all my tight end sleepers right now, but it's round 3 and you accidentally draft Erik Smith in the 3rd round because that's the top of your queue. So you got to have that clean queue, have that ready to go. We also have Callen Elslager, QB List podcaster, who you will find this year on the Waiver Wire podcast. Callen, how's it going?
Good to be back, Myles. Glad to be here. Excited to draft this team and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Do you expect to see any of your Pittsburgh Steelers on the waiver wire this year? Anyone worth picking up? Because it kind of feels like we're drafting every member of the Steelers this year.
Yeah, we'll find some sleepers. I have a couple names in mind who could possibly emerge, not in this draft, but they could have that breakout potential tight end sleeper this year.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have been in on the tight end, the rookie whose name I'm forgetting because it's a long one. But also Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth, I think is Freiermuth. There you go.
It's like Callen's here to pronounce his tight end.
There you go. That's exactly the only.
I partly talk for a living on this podcast, so
that is the only thing that you are here for, is to pronounce that one tight end's name. Also, your quarterback Roethlisberger, he might be waiver wire material. Definitely a QB streamer throughout the year. And finally, we have Ryan Heath joining us. Ryan, also a podcaster and a writer as well, who just wrote that amazing article about league-winning running backs. He's going to be joining myself and Erik on the Sit Start podcast this year. So, Ryan, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm excited to be here. I know it's fantasy football season now. I have all these different people in my life asking me to help them draft teams coming up in the next couple of weeks. So that's how I know it's my favorite time of year, and I'm ready to go tonight.
Yeah, I was very excited. I just started a new job recently. Very excited to tell everyone. Yeah, like we're all talking about our side hustles and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I work and write for this fantasy football website, and now I'm regretting it because I'm getting so many DMs about mid-round sleepers. And someone hit me up and they're like, who should I take in the middle of my draft? And I was like, oh, awesome. What's your format? Like standard PPR? Is like, oh, I don't know. Drafts in 2 weeks. I have no idea. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's always the answer is, oh, I don't know. I'll find out later maybe. Can you call me at this time? Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Damian Harris, maybe not. I don't know. It could just very, very dependent on your format here. But no, absolutely. It is definitely that time of year. And we know because, again, we're doing these drafts. By the way, we're going to be taking your questions throughout the live stream. So leave them in the chat. I will get to as many of them as I can throughout this live stream. So definitely send us those. You can should be able to send it in the chat on either Periscope or YouTube, wherever you're watching us, and I should be able to see them. But let me ask you guys, before we start the draft, how do you prepare for your drafts? Erik, let's start with you. Like, what kind of research are you doing before the draft starts? What are you looking at to kind of get ready for a night like tonight?
Right. Well, it's probably not fair coming from me because I already have all my rankings set. So I've kind of done a lot of the work ahead of time. But like I was saying, I like to go through and set at least the first 3 rounds, get my queue set. That seems to be the most frantic time of drafts. It's kind of the time that can make or break them. So I get my queue in order. I have a good idea of what my first 3 picks are and go from there. Obviously, catching up on some last-minute injury news helps. I see Darrell Henderson maybe hurt his thumb in practice. So it never ends with fantasy football, but I'm just trying to stay on top of the news and setting your queue.
Do you have anything readily available? Like, do you print out like rankings? You got your highlighter there, or are you more like just what's on your computer type of guy, or are you just flying, blind? Like what do you do when the draft's actually going?
No, I have my ranks up, definitely ranks up. And if I'm drafting in person, I'm pen and paper. I don't want to mess with a laptop. That's just a good way to miss a pick and time out. So I'm old school if I'm drafting in person. Sometimes even on the internet, I'll have it there just to kind of have a backup plan. But no, I generally eyeball it. And but I've done enough of these drafts. Like I said, it's maybe not fair asking me. So.
Okay, well then let's move on to someone else then, Erik. If I can't ask you, Callen, how do you prep for a draft, and what do you have there with you when you're actually drafting?
So like Erik, I have my rankings pretty set. I've been working on projections for myself throughout the off season. They're pretty set, ready to go. So I have those up along with my rankings that come from those. I usually just go straight off the laptop. I'll print it out similarly if I have a pen and paper to live draft, but I don't, especially in the times when there's not many of those going on right now. But so I just have those up, and usually I'll also pull up either NFC or Fantasy Pros ADP data, just so I have an idea of some sleepers or guys who I may want to draft, and kind of picking around. Okay, can I wait another round on this guy, and playing with that in my head. So it helps to have ADP up as well.
All right, Ryan, how about you? How are you preparing?
Yeah, so for my preparation, aside from looking at rankings and projections like they've talked about, really the biggest thing for me is practice. I mean, right now we're doing a mock draft that kind of is practice, but you can actually do best ball drafts all summer long on platforms like Yahoo or on Underdog Fantasy. Do like a $1, $3, $5 draft. It's a lot of fun, and it's going to do the best job of giving you an idea where you like to get guys, where you usually can get guys. That's really the best thing that you can do to prepare for a big draft, in my opinion. And in front of me, I usually fly kind of blind. I will sort of have like my own personal rankings in my head. Like I know where I like to get guys just because I've done so many of them this summer. But yeah, like you said, probably not fair to ask me. I think it can really help to have like some tiered rankings up next to you. And yeah, I agree. Live draft, paper and pencil is the way to go. Laptop just gets annoying and cumbersome. I'm drafting from my phone tonight. So
there you go. That's a little rich for my blood. Dollar best ball draft. I don't know if I can do that. I need to save that money for Arizona, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't drink those anymore. So I don't know what I'm saving that dollar for, but that is a really good idea. I know a lot of people have been doing more best ball drafts throughout the summer. So definitely a great way to draft and actually have some skin in the game. There's nothing worse than joining like a public mock draft and you see by round 4, like 8 of the teams are auto picking. So that always sucks. Do you guys have anything specific? Do you keep snacks, water, coffee, tea, beer, any of that stuff? Anyone? Just kind of open-ended question here.
Definitely water. Maybe a later night podcast. We'll have some beer, but
this is full vodka, by the way.
Right.
Hey, you're not drafting, so you don't need to worry about auto drafting Blake Jarwin in the second round.
There you go. All right. So then once you find out what pick you have, because normally when you're doing live drafts, I feel like a lot of people, right, you're doing your live drafts on Yahoo. You don't find out what your pick is until like 15, maybe 30 minutes before the draft. And that's even if you're, being on top of it ahead of time. What do you do once you find out what pick you have? Like what is immediately going through your mind? What moves do you make now that all right, cool, I've got pick 4? What runs through your mind? Ryan, we're going to go to you first.
Yeah, sure. So I just found out that my pick in this draft is 11th overall. So being at the back of the first round, I know that there I like to target a top wide receiver or potentially Travis Kelce. And I know that from there, the rest of my draft is going to be informed by that first pick I made. So since I'm probably not going to go running back in the first, I might go running back in the early second. There's a couple guys I like there. And as I run down, I'm going to always know how much draft capital I've already spent at each position. And that's going to inform my decisions as I go. And you always have to be open to something happening that you don't expect to. I was helping a friend with a super flex draft a couple days ago, and Patrick Mahomes fell to the 108. And I told him that he had to press that draft player button as fast as he possibly could. So you always got to be open to change as well.
Yeah, in a super flex league, quarterbacks go a lot faster than in normal league. So while no one will ever recommend drafting Patrick Mahomes in the 8th pick in a super flex league, yeah, sure, that's absolutely different. Knowing your draft, your league settings usually helpful. Callen, what about you? You find out what pick you have. What's the first move you're making?
So I was talking about ADP, and usually that's kind of where I go. Is I'll look at the ADP and start looking, okay, around this pick, these are generally the guys who are available. So you start kind of mapping in your head the strategy of do you want to go running back early? Do you want to go wide receiver early? Can I get one of these running backs second round? So, and like Ryan, you got to stay flexible because crazy things have happened. You think about from your spot, will one of those tight ends be available for you in the early rounds? Do you want to do that? You start kind of mapping out based on patterns you've seen from previous drafts, but stay flexible that things change. Every draft is a whole blank slate that changes in a flash.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, to answer one of the questions in the chat, or not really a question, but I'm not really a gin guy. It's too dry for me. I'm also not really a vodka guy either. I'm more just straight whiskey, and that's pretty much all I'll drink. All right. So tonight's draft is going to be PPR, 3 wide receiver leagues. So we've got 10 starting roster spots, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, tight end, a flex position, kicker, and defense. We're actually going to make you guys draft that tonight. I know everyone likes to avoid these spots, but I want to see for real how you guys handle them. And if anyone here will draft defenses like they do in my Yahoo public leagues, aka like in the 7th round. And then there's going to be 5 bench spots for a total of 15 roster spots. And we are going to be starting the draft here in just a second. Remember, once again, you can leave your thoughts, questions in the chat, and we are going to address them as much as we can. Looks like Joe Orlovsky is on the clock here with the first pick. And is it safe to say, would you guys say that drafts this year really seem to start at pick 3, or have you guys seen anyone make unexpected moves with the second pick?
I've seen some Derrick Henry galaxy braining going on in the top 2 picks in some drafts I've done, but as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it starts after Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin.
All right,
Cook
well, yeah, not here because McCaffrey and Cook went 1 and 2. Callen, you took Alvin Kamara number 3. Why Kamara over the likes of Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, or like the wide receivers?
In a PPR, you know there's safe volume with Alvin Kamara and within the passing game, and Derrick Henry's going to be great, but you wonder with the addition of Julio Jones, do they try and scale back his carries slightly? I just know that the safe volume of Kamara is there, and it's a pretty easy call. The first 3 for me, those 3, it's straightforward and doesn't change really for me.
Yeah, that's fair. And now we have Travis Kelce going off the board at pick 5, which is pretty much at the upper end of his picks. Eric, you were on the clock with pick 6. And you took Devontae Adams. You took a wide receiver. Why wide receiver here at pick 6?
Yeah, so I've been getting 1 running back early in these drafts and just taking receiver after receiver in them. And Devontae Adams is my 6th best player on the board here. I'm going to stick with it. I feel confident enough of the players I can get in the 2nd round that I think I can get a good running back there if I need to. And I do think 0 running back is a viable strategy if you need to do it. So I just think he's the best player here. I'll see how it settles to me in the 2nd round and go from there. But I don't want to reach on a running back. And I think the first tier of running backs for me is gone there.
All right, so you took Devontae Adams, and we saw Tyreek Hill go right after you to Mark Salazar. Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor go at 8 and 9. This is really surprising because I've seen Ezekiel Elliott's ADP really keep climbing and climbing lately to the point that I've seen him being picked as high as 3rd overall. He's been going top 5 pretty consistently in fantasy data's ADP, and he drops all the way to 10 before Ryan picking another wide receiver here in Stephon Diggs. So we have 3 wide receivers in the first round. That feels like a lot.
Yeah, it might be a lot. I mean, I was really hoping that Adams or Hill would fall to me, and then I saw Ezekiel Elliott sliding down that board thinking I'd get really lucky, but I'm fine with Diggs there. I have him in that tier with Hill and Adams. I mean, he's an elite producer. That offense is going to run through him, and Josh Allen's probably going to have another incredible year. So I'm cool with Diggs in the first round.
And then you pick Antonio Gibson as your first running back over the likes of someone like Austin Eckler, who went the pick after him. I know you identified Gibson in that article as someone who could really break out this year. And it looks like you're willing to kind of plant your flag as him being your number 1 running back.
Yeah, I've been planting my flag on it. Antonio Gibson in the early 2nd, pretty much since I wrote that article. I really like a lot of his peripherals. I mean, in the last couple of weeks of the preseason, we haven't seen him playing on 3rd downs as much as we maybe hoped, but They have been scheming him touches in the passing game. I don't really care if he gets it on 3rd down, as long as he's catching the ball. I don't care if it's on 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down. So I really think he has a lot of upside this year, and I'm not backing off the Antonio Gibson has number 1 running back overall potential this year.
Yeah, J.D. McKissick was in on a 3rd and 1, and that was kind of an issue that people were very concerned about, that Gibson was not going to be getting these 3rd down touches. But if they're scheming him looks in the passing game, then that's just as productive, whether it's on 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down. Do we think Ezekiel Elliott's ADP is climbing because of Hard Knocks, because the Cowboys are the feature team on Hard Knocks this year?
There's always that Hard Knocks. There's always that Hard Knocks bump that you get from people. So it wouldn't shock me if it's a slight bump. I don't know if the going all the way to 3 would be based on that, but wouldn't shock me if part of it is due to that.
People just want to see Zeke not washed up and looking explosive. So if he's out there on Hard Knocks cutting, that'll jump him up a few rounds for sure. Yeah, not a few rounds, few picks.
Yeah, I was going to say a few rounds. Wow, he's being picked in the negative 2nd round. So you picked Najee Harris here after a little wide receiver run of Hopkins, Metcalf, and Ridley. If the wide receivers weren't going off the board so quickly, would you have gone 0 RB here?
Yeah, I would have. Actually, if Najee Harris was not there, I would have gone with Calvin Ridley went right before. AJ Brown, probably, Justin Jefferson. He was the last of that tier for me, Najee Harris was, so I was pretty happy to get him there. And that's kind of what I was debating at the first pick, taking Devontae Adams, and it worked out nicely. I like Devontae Adams and Najee Harris more than Saquon Barkley and Calvin Ridley. So I really like that. I could have missed it by 1, and then I just pivot to more receivers.
Yeah, this was the fastest I've seen receivers go off the board in drafts. I mean, Diggs in the 1st round, and then all 3 of Ridley, Metcalf, and Hopkins off the board before we're halfway through round 2. So I wonder if one of those picks was Harris instead, if you would still like your team as much. I mean, we still have so much more draft to go, but it's something certainly interesting. Speaking of AJ Brown, he goes at your 2nd pick, Callen. So now you have Kamara and Brown. All 3 of you have a wide receiver running back. So without saying your own team, because obviously that's who you feel best about, which of these pairings do you feel best about? Callen, we'll start with you. Do you like Eric's pairing of wide receiver and running back, or Ryan's?
I'm going to be biased with that as a Steeler fan. I like Eric's pick. I think Dante Adams is the number 1 wide receiver. Najee Harris come back around. He's going to get the volume. I like Antonio Gibson. I still have some question. I'll take him over Harris for sure, but I think there's just a slight question mark. So I'll take a more sure thing with Adams and Harris than with Diggs and Gibson, but both I'd be happy with.
Eric, who do you feel better about, Kamara and Brown or Diggs and Gibson?
I like Kamara and Brown, but it's kind of cheating. 3 is a great spot there to get Kamara. So Ryan did well. I would have taken Gibson if he was there for me in the 2nd round. So I love Diggs and Gibson as well.
All right. And then Darren Waller went right before your pick, Callen. Was Waller at all a consideration for you in the 2nd round?
No, I tend to try to avoid tight end that early. I'm kind of steering more.
So you're not picking George Kittle here?
No, I'm not going to take George Kittle here.
So all of you have a running back, wide receiver. Where are you looking next? Is it just best player available, or do you want like a position specifically, like if you had your choice?
Well, I'm trying to go best player available, but I think some of the running backs I'd like to let fall another round, but we'll see who goes ahead of me here.
Well, Mahomes goes ahead of you in the 3rd round. Actually, is it probably a good spot for him, middle of the 3rd round? Ryan, are you? I mean, you kind of have a turn spot almost at pick 11. You basically have 2 picks in a 4-pick swing. How do you approach those picks? Do you see them as kind of being like almost one pick together? Like, how, are you looking at one position first and then hoping the other position you can get someone there? Like, what's your approach there at the end of the round?
Yeah, whenever I'm drafting on or near the turn, what I'm really trying to do is start a run at whatever position it might be, because those runs will get away from you if you're on the turn. It's 20 plus picks between your picks. So what you want to do, your only power really is you can draft the same position twice in a row and hopefully start a run that other people are going to have to chase. So I didn't do that in the 1st and 2nd round, but we might do that coming up here in a minute.
Oh, we'll have to see if you can start a run. Eric, you and Callen both went with a wide receiver here in the 3rd round. I mean, I don't know how much of that is the fact that at this point in the draft, I mean, DeAndre Swift and CEH both went at the beginning of the 3rd round. So best options on the board were like J.K. Dobbins, maybe David Montgomery, Chris Carson are the guys that are generally going to be available at this spot. So I don't know how much of it was just the running backs available, but do you feel better with 2 wide receivers and a running back after 3 rounds?
This is my preferred strategy for sure. I got sniped on quite a few there. I wanted those, so I was kind of scrambling when I took Terry McLaurin. It's kind of a toss-up between McLaurin and Mike Evans, honestly, for me. And I just draft Mike Evans in every draft. I figured I'd mix it up with McLaurin. But Keenan Allen's who I really wanted. That's who Callen got. Would have loved to have seen him fall. CeeDee Lamb would have been great. DeAndre Swift, I was surprised to see go there. I thought he might fall a little bit, but I guess he's back in practicing. He was one of my running back targets as well.
Callen, what about you?
I was actually looking to go running back there. Honestly, DeAndre Swift was my target there, and then he got sniped in front of me. And the value for Keenan Allen, I think it's just a good spot. I'm okay with trying to see if I can get a running back into round 4, kind of like Eric was doing. I'd rather go 2 running backs to start, but I'm willing to when someone like Keenan Allen still there, and you can start off Brown and Allen. You can't get too mad about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you took Amari Cooper there with your 3rd pick, Ryan. So all 3 of you starting with 2 wide receivers and a running back. Are you looking to pick another wide receiver here, Ryan?
Yeah, almost certainly. I like this chunk of wide receivers here a lot more than the running backs available. I mean, you're really looking at guys like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs. These are like your typical dead zone running backs that we talk about. So this wide receiver zone, I think, is really juicy, and I'm about to take a second one, and I will be going with Cooper Kupp.
Oh, great. So now your team name can easily be Amari Cooper Kupp. I love it. This is exactly why, and you mentioning that about wide receivers, exactly how I feel. This is exactly why I really want to start my drafts with 2 running backs. I went into my first drafts thinking that I would do probably running back, wide receiver, or maybe even go because I really like Kelsey. But as I've been doing drafts, I find I don't want to be drafting running backs at this point. There's maybe a few people left on the board. Montgomery, one of them. I love that pick for Aaron Rader of David Montgomery. But like, there's not many running backs at this point that I still want on the team. So I kind of find myself wanting to get like, if I get Mike Davis or Myles Gaskin, I want them as like my 3rd running back. I don't want them as RB2. So I want 2 running backs early on. So it's really interesting to me to see all of you, not doing that. I'm very curious to see who your RB2s end up being.
Well, I think the argument there is just that you can just kind of spam the wide receiver position, fill your 3 wide receivers, fill your flex, have good backups. And then you're just worried about your running back 2 all year. You locked in your running back 1 with a good one, and then you just use the rest of your bench to piece together that position, get waiver wire pickups. I think that's the argument there. So that's why a lot of us go receiver heavy.
If you're in a fab league, I guess it's different if you're in a waiver wire league because you can just spam it. But if you're in a fab league, like running backs are the ones that you spend all your money. Like you could easily be out of fab by week 3 if you go into the season thinking I'll get my 2nd running back on the wire. So that's why for me, I want to make sure that I at least have some depth there. But you're on the clock here, Eric, and you take another wide receiver.
Yeah.
So you've got your 3 wide receiver spots filled up in Adams, McLaurin, and Woods. I like that wide receiver core. I like that a lot.
Thank you. I almost went quarterback there. So that's all, it probably won't make it back to me, but I was really tempted to pull the trigger on a quarterback. So
you sniped me there. I was looking to
long distance snipe.
So,
yep. Callen, how are you pivoting now that Robert Woods got sniped
out? Good question. I'm trying to pivot right now.
So in a second after you've pivoted, you can tell us what your thought process was and what you do. Eric, while Callen's trying to pivot, what happens to you when someone gets sniped? Like you had with Keenan Allen when Callen took him from you. What do you do in those moments? How do you move on to the next pick?
I mean, that's why it helps for sure to have your queue set, especially those first few rounds where a mistake is just terrible. That way you can just kind of default to your rankings if you get in a panic. But I think those players that you're targeting in every draft. And if you're on the clock and you don't know what to do, I would throw out ADP if you have to. If it's someone you really like and it'd be a round or 2 later, then just grab them. It's better than just getting auto-drafted some veteran that you're just over. So I think go with your guy if you get last second on the clock. And I really like Callen's pick there for a last second pick. That was a solid one. And we all have the exact same team build, so we obviously know what we're doing.
or none of you know what you're doing. Either all of you know what you're doing or none of you know what you're doing. T. Higgins at the beginning of the 5th round, that has to be, that may not be a high for him, but that is definitely early seeing him there at pick 49. Eric, seeing as you're currently live streaming from one of the offices there at the Bengal Stadium, do you think this is an early pick for T. Higgins or are you on board with it?
No, I'm on board with it. I had Jamar Chase really high, and I don't think some of the stories coming out of camp are enough to just bail on Jamar Chase, but it's enough to show that there's a learning curve here. He's not going to hit the ground running, most likely from week 1. And I do think whoever the number 1 is in this offense has a huge opportunity. So, I flip-flopped Higgins and Chase in my rankings as well. If you have Chase in a dynasty league, I'm not worried. I just think the first few weeks of this season might be a little touchy with them. So, Higgins has jumped ahead of Jamar Chase for me.
Yeah, this is 20 picks earlier than his ADP. However, to your point earlier, Ryan, on being at the turn, he picked it. Joe Orlovsky picked him at pick 49. His next pick isn't until 73 or 72 rather. So there's 23 picks before he gets another selection. Getting Higgins there, you kind of do have to reach and take that pick, or else you're probably not getting him there. Which also, by the way, Ryan, I would ask you about your Patriots, but there haven't been any relevant ones for me to ask you about.
Yeah, that you might be waiting a little while before we get to some Patriots talk in this mock draft.
Well, I'll definitely ask you about Damian Harris when he gets picked here some point in the next 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, we might be waiting. Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath.
So, Myles Gaskin goes in the 5th round. I feel like we were all kind of overreacting a little bit. I don't know. Maybe we can overreact again after week 3, but I feel like Gaskin should have gone ahead of like Miles Sanders and maybe even Darrell Henderson. I don't know how you guys feel about Gaskin, but I feel like we probably overreacted a little bit.
Yeah, I think we did.
Like the whole industry, not just us.
We overcorrected. Yeah, we've overcorrected a couple times here. So as long as he's catching the passes, that's what we want from Myles Gaskin. So until I see a reason that he's not out there on 3rd down and passing situations, I think he's a decent mid-round value.
And then Callen, you taking Lamar Jackson here in the 5th round. Erik taking Dak Prescott. So now we have 5 quarterbacks off the board here midway through round 5. This is kind of the point where you either get your guy or you kind of just get whoever's left over, it feels like.
Yeah. And that was a bit of a panic pick for me, Dak Prescott. So I watched my queue just get wiped out. And I felt like he had the best upside of the remaining quarterbacks, and I didn't love any of the receivers. So that's how I ended up with Dak. I don't know about you, Callen. You got one of the quarterbacks I wanted, so I should have known they weren't going to.
I don't usually go quarterback early. I've been kind of doing a little bit more. Being a foul running back and Lamar Jackson essentially running like a running back at times, I figured this would be good value. Try and get the rushing production from him to fill both the passing game if he does decide to pass more than 20 times a game, and then the rushing floor, which he has, will fill out some of the running back needs I have.
All right, yeah, and then Ryan, you're the first one of the group to get your RB2, and it's Travis Etienne of Jacksonville. Who does anyone know if he's like how many touches he's gonna get? I feel like we're all kind of being a little optimistic about how many potential touches he's gonna get, but it sounds like James Robinson and Carlos Hyde aren't going anywhere at the moment. How many touches are you projecting per game for Etienne, Ryan?
If Etienne sees 15 touches per game with 6 or 7 targets, I know you're like, whoa, but
wow.
Really, I think starting out, 10 rushes per game is in his range of outcomes. And as the season goes on, I think he really could come on. I mean, maybe I'm a sucker here. Like, this is the archetype of running back that I am always drafting in the middle rounds, the skilled receiver that is a rookie with high draft capital. I mean, it kind of worked out for me in like Miles Sanders' rookie year. He had some really nice games down the stretch there. So that's kind of the type of player I'm looking at for my RB2 a lot of the time, just because there's a lot of upside there. And if it doesn't work out, 5th round, that's not going to completely kill you.
I just 10 rushes per game. I feel like that's like where we're going to be in like week 8 or 9. Like he's going to work his way up to those 10 rushes. That's my concern with Etienne, that if they're going to use him more in that 3rd down role, we might see like Nyheim Hines level usage, which is not a 5th round player. But that, Etienne, however, does have the draft capital. The guys in front of him aren't exactly world beaters. So I mean, the upside is there. That's just,
it's very rare for players with the draft capital of Etienne to not be used heavily in their rookie years. And that's just a historical bet that I'm fine planting my flag on at the end of the 5th round.
Yeah, that's fair. I think someone had posted in our Discord within the last 5 years, only one 1st round running back did not get like 200 plus touches their rookie season. And it was Rashad Penny, who was hurt. So yeah, I mean, the history is definitely on your side. Erik, you went with Trey Sermon, who I take everything I just said about Etienne and copy and paste it and subtract draft capital and subtract, the fact that the guys in front of, I feel like Raheem Mostert might be, I don't know, Mostert and Robinson might be similarly entrenched there in the starting role, but Sermon in round 6, I feel like I would have rather had Javonte Williams.
I mean, those were the two on my board, so take your pick there. I just like the upside in San Francisco a lot more. Love Shanahan, love the possibility if we get Trey Lance in there. I just think they have an excellent running game, and there's a lot of reasons Sermon may end up like J.K. Dobbins last year where it takes him a while to get going, but the upside is huge. I'm similar to Ryan here. My RB2, I want to swing for the upside. I can get some PPR backs later on. So the ankle injury that forced him to sit out, don't feel great about doing that at this point, but when you're drafting at this part of the season, you never know if these injuries are serious or not. So I wouldn't let them scare you off too much until you see a real injury report.
So, Myles, you said you like Javonte Williams?
Yes, I like Javonte Williams here more than Trey Sermon. I just think with San Francisco, right? I mean, I think Sermon has more of a floor than Javonte Williams because San Francisco will mix and match their running backs. With Denver, I feel like there's a better chance Javonte just takes the job from Melvin Gordon. It's going to take a while, and he's not someone that I want to be starting week 1, but I think I will like Javonte Williams in week 5 a whole lot more than I'll like Trey Sermon in week 5.
Yeah,
something like that.
Because he's why I ended up taking him from that round. So that's the only reason.
Yeah. No, I did know. I did notice that, Callen. You good pick. I will. Callen and Erik, you guys both took quarterbacks. Both Wilson and Herbert were picked before you would have come back around. Do you feel good then that you picked the quarterback when you did and didn't wait for Rodgers or even Hurts at the end of the sixth round?
Yeah, I feel fine about Dak there. Rodgers, I would have been okay with as well, but that was the last one, and I would have been cutting it awfully close. So, yeah, I'm glad I just went with it and got a quarterback out of the way.
I would have been fine with Rodgers, but with what my team I felt like needed, I felt like going up and snagging Rodgers in the fifth, or not Rodgers, Jackson in the 5th was a good pick for me. So I would have been fine sitting out and getting Rodgers in the 6th, but with the running backs who are there, I'm good with the Jackson Williams turn compared to Rodgers and ETN or something like that.
Right. Russell Wilson also picked in that round, and that was by you, Ryan. So, I mean, it's tough because your previous pick to that was pick 38, I think, at the beginning of the 4th round there. So I don't think you're picking, one of the quarterbacks available there. Murray and Jackson both went after pick 49. So it would have been a much earlier pick to grab one of those guys. But to get Russell Wilson in round 6, probably feel good about that, right?
Yeah, I feel really good about Russell Wilson in round 6 this year. I mean, he's really the bottom of that top tier of 6 guys for me that are really elite through the air and really elite on the ground. I mean, I really like that Brian Schottenheimer is no longer in Seattle. We could see Russ cooking for the entire season this time instead of just the first half. If Tyler Lockett can stay healthy, I mean, that team is set up to break some leagues this year.
Well, and with you on the board here, what are you looking to do with your next 2 picks? And by the way, how much do you factor in the roster construction of the person picking after you when you're making your picks?
I try not to completely overthink it. I mean, right now I'm kind of looking at tight end. I mean, I know we've had lots of discourse about Dallas Goedert, but he's someone that I'm comfortable with. They're ahead of Noah Fant. I mean, I really just see a way better path to consistent volume for him than I do for Fant. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of any of the wide receivers that are left on the board, except for one, which I'm hoping will still be there on the wraparound here. And yes, he's still there, and that is Mr. Antonio Brown, who has had higher target shares than both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in games that all 3 of them played last year. Tom Brady absolutely loves him, and I still have no idea why he's going 4 rounds after both Godwin and Evans.
So let me ask you. You picked Dallas Goedert first, and Corey, who was picking in pick 12, right after you, he did not have a tight end on his roster. If he had, let's say he had drafted, I don't know, TJ Hawkinson around before, would you have picked Brown first and then Goddard on the wraparound, expecting that he wouldn't pick a tight end during those 2 picks, or were you going with Goddard there regardless, just to make sure you got him?
I mean, that's definitely the smart thing to do. I mean, I glance and see if he had a tight end? Yes, but I don't think that's always the most important. If you have a guy there, I mean, it's 2 picks. Like, I would just take your guy if you really believe that you need him there. Goddard, I mean, I had him and Fant next to each other, so it wouldn't have been the end of the world to miss out on one or the other. So, I mean, yeah, it was possible that Corey could have taken one, but it probably wouldn't have been that big a deal. So maybe I should have taken Brown first.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, especially at least in home leagues, I always found they're very unpredictable. And when you think, oh yeah, this guy drafted Travis Kelce, he's not going to draft the backup tight end. They do for some reason. That literally happened to me one time. I was at the turn. I think I had picked 10. Both guys after me had tight ends, including Travis Kelce, on one team, and that team drafted not just a tight end, but the tight end I wanted, which I believe was Logan Thomas. I think he took Logan Thomas in like round 13 last year, and I was like, really? I'm the only person who doesn't have a tight end, and we're out here drafting backup tight ends. Okay, cool. Speaking of Logan Thomas, Eric, you take him here in round 8. Do you see more of what happened last year, even with a new quarterback in town, and supposedly more pass attempts to Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Logan Thomas had 110 targets last year. There are a lot of tight ends that aren't going to sniff that, just period. And that was with a pretty limited offense with Erik Smith and other quarterbacks. There was a tweet that I shared in our what we saw on Reddit. When Ryan Fitzpatrick's been on the field this preseason, Logan Thomas has been out there for every snap. He's running a route on like every single drop back. They're putting him out wide. So I just think if he gets better production from the quarterback position this year on 110 targets, he could blow up. So that's what I'm banking on with Thomas. He's really talented. He's a veteran tight end. We don't have to worry about him learning the position. So I'm all on board with Thomas this year.
Yeah, if Dwayne Haskins isn't throwing him the ball. We have to talk about the player picked after you, and that was Corey Davis, who has been absolutely screaming up draft boards lately. His ADP continues to climb and climb and climb. It, according to fantasy data, moved up 13 spots in the last week, and I think it's going to climb even more over this next week as people react to this past week of preseason. Is Corey Davis, are we now overcorrecting again this time, drafting him too high, taking Corey Davis here in the 8th round?
It's the 8th round, so I don't think it's bad. I don't mind chasing the usage in the preseason because that is valuable information. I kind of just don't see a breakout from him. I do think there's enough competition at receiver once they're all on the field. So I'm not drafting him a ton, but I don't think by any means 8th round is a problem.
Also, apparently Ben Brown was considering drafting Logan Thomas despite having drafted Travis Kelce, to which I say you probably would have been fired had you done that. We probably would. It just would have been. I mean, you're running the draft, so we can't do it in the middle of the draft. But by the end of it, we would have definitely had to have.
Just trying to stay on brand. I mean, that's his guy. So don't.
That is his guy. That's true. He did call the breakout last year. But we have to hold on. So Damian Harris gets picked here in the 9th round. I in the last podcast when we were talking about sleepers, I asked Eric why on earth, if Philip Lindsay is going at pick 130, why we're taking Damian Harris in the 6th round. And here Damian Harris falls to round 9. So Ryan, is Damian Harris worth more than Philip Lindsay? And was he drafted too late here in the 9th round?
Damian Harris is worth more than Philip Lindsay, just because I think this Patriots offense is going to be somewhat okay, maybe kind of more competent than down in Houston. I mean, that situation just is an absolute dumpster fire. They could win 0 games this year, and I don't think people would be that surprised. The Patriots love playing their power run football. It's not fun to watch. I hated it all last year. Every Sunday, I would get super mad every time we'd run on 1st and 10 and on 2nd and 8. But I mean, Damian Harris is actually locked into some volume this year. I really think this Ramondre Stevenson stuff is noise. So in the 9th round, I mean, yeah, lock in that volume. I mean, as your RB4, like it is for Justin, then that's really good depth. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all.
Yeah, we saw Ramondre Stevenson get compared to LaDainian Tomlinson on Twitter, so that was fun. I really like that a lot. Definitely for real there. And then, Callen, you picked David Johnson right after Damian Harris. So talking about that Texans backfield, why are we drafting David Johnson? I tried to word that as nicely as I can.
No, it's kind of I feel like for sure, Carrie. It's kind of almost. I will say it was a pivot pick. Damian Harris was next on my queue. He picked. I was adding people in the queue and had to make a late pick, but he's supposed to be getting somewhat guaranteed-ish work, and he's going to get in the passing game. I'm not set on it. It's kind of just hoping that he gets it, but I'll admit it was partly a panic pick after getting sniped a second too soon.
I mean, if there is a league to pick David Johnson in, it's a PPR league, as he is going to have the third down work this year. He has always been productive in the passing game when play callers will actually throw him the ball. So it's not terrible for a PPR league, but Houston, it is tough. Eric, you picked Cole Hardman there. Popular sleeper pick. Got him in round 9. Are you expecting some more volume in this Kansas City offense beyond Hill and Kelsey?
I mean, it should happen one of these days. You got to think something's going to come up where they get a third person involved. Much like Callen, I watched Zach Moss go the pick before me, which was my target as my RB3. Had Damian Harris queued up as well. So that's kind of one of those where there wasn't a pick I loved on the board, and I'm just shooting for upside. I think I probably drafted Mecole Hardman in the 9th round last year. Didn't work out. It may be throwing away a pick, but he's just one of those draft picks where if it hits, it's going to pay off for you big time. So
we're really going high upside here, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I've already got 4 receivers, I'm just at this point, I don't really need Jarvis Landry on the bench or whatever to back him up. So I'd rather go for someone who could be a big difference maker.
And then Ryan, it looks like you might have successfully started a running back run here after you picked Kenyon Drake, James Conner went, then you picked AJ Dillon, and we've had Fournette and Hines go. Before I ask you about Drake and Dillon, you picked Dallas Goedert at the end of the 7th round, and Noah Fant went in the beginning of the 10th round. So you could have gotten Fant 2 rounds later. Do you feel like you might have reached a little bit at tight end, knowing where Fant ended up going?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I reached a tight end. I mean, this is what happens pretty much anytime you draft a middle round tight end is you're shoulda, coulda, woulda-ing a couple rounds later. But that's how it goes sometimes. I mean, maybe you guys are right. Maybe I need to just finally get off of Dallas Goedert. And maybe I've been too take locked on him. So maybe this is a lesson, and this is why we do mock drafts.
At the same time, I was about to say, does it matter though? Because the second you don't pick Dallas Goedert in the 7th round, things go a little bit differently. We're all watching What If, right? The great Marvel series, and it takes that one butterfly effect, and then boom, 10 tight ends went off the board before your next pick. So that's the kind of thing that you kind of have to have kind of a short memory on when you're drafting. There's nothing you can do. You can't go back and change your Dallas Goedert pick now. You got to trust your gut and go with your guy. Speaking of your guy, you took Kenyon Drake and AJ Dillon. Kind of a couple of handcuffs. I'm not really sure. What are we expecting from Kenyon Drake while Josh Jacobs is healthy?
I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but I mean, they paid him like $12.5 million guaranteed or something like that. I can't imagine that Kenyon Drake is like a 2-touch a game backup for Josh Jacobs this year. Like, unless the Raiders really just wanted to get rid of money, I can't see Drake not having at least a role on 3rd downs for sure. And I mean, if Josh Jacobs were to get hurt, Drake is walking into a ton of volume. The Raiders are always very run heavy. And I mean, it's a similar process with AJ Dillon. We could see some usage in the beginning of the year, maybe on the goal line, maybe spelling Jones. The Packers have liked to use 2 running backs to keep Jones healthy. So both of these guys could see some early season usability while also really having that upside if an injury were to occur.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It may have just been that they went into the casinos and won big on like a craps table. And then they were like, all right, Kenyon Drake, you got all that money you wanted because we got a lot more money all of a sudden. Who knows? Who knows how the cap works in the NFL? I mean, I'm pretty sure sometimes it just works like that. I want to ask about Ryan Tannehill, who is picked here with the 5th pick of the 10th round. So let's pick 108, 110. I know math. It's like around there. Okay. And his general ADP on fantasy data has been pick 93. I feel like it's even higher than that on Yahoo. Why are we so much lower on Ryan Tannehill? It feels like the industry, and by that I mean like the people who write and podcast at various fantasy football websites, is generally lower on Ryan Tannehill than the public is. So Eric, why do you think we're all drafting Tannehill so much lower?
I mean, there's only 12 teams in a league, and everyone's going to draft one quarterback, so people are just going to fall. I don't think most of us have anything against Ryan Tannehill. We just go with the rushing upside above him. Yes, he does have
of Tom Brady.
Upside.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, sorry,
I know you don't like Tom Brady. So.
No. I mean, Tom Brady also just threw how many touchdowns did he throw? 40-some touchdowns. Like, I mean, he's got a great supporting cast around him. There's some more question marks in Tennessee than there is in Tampa Bay. So, but no, I mean, there's just once you pick a quarterback, you don't think about him again for another 10 rounds or whatever. So Somebody's going to fall. I hear it a lot with Tannehill. People kind of thinking everyone's hating on him, and I think he's a great option. So it's just how early you want to take a quarterback, how much upside you want. But he's been efficient. You just worry that they lose that efficiency without Arthur Smith. But I think he's got another good year in him.
Do we think his ADP gets pushed up in like Yahoo and ESPN because there are teams that draft like the team that drafts Dak Prescott might draft a second quarterback in like a general public league. Like,
Right.
do we think that's what's pushing up Tannehill's ADP is just that people are more willing to have two quarterbacks than anyone really in this draft will?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but we've maybe got Trey Lance coming. We've maybe got Justin Fields coming. Zach Wilson has looked good. Like, there's plenty of people that people get excited about and hype up about Tannehill. So I don't know. I think he's going to be a good deal in just about every draft. So if you're patient, he's going to be there for you.
All right, that's fair. And then I just really like you being on brand, picking Giovanni Bernard ahead of other pass catching running backs like J.D. McKissick, who went one pick later, and James White, who still is available to be drafted. Callen, you picked Tyler Higbee there ahead of Mike Gesicki. So this is kind of what like the end of the tight end run looks like in a industry league. It'll look very different probably in your home league. But Higbee there in round 10, and then T.Y. Hilton in round 11. Are you not concerned about him being, old and unable to play?
No, I'm not concerned with that. You see,
okay, there we go.
My team, it's filled with kind of older receivers with Keenan Allen and Adam Thielen, but the volume will be
David Johnson. Yeah.
David Johnson. Yeah. The volume will kind of be there. After Pittman, who really is that number 2 target. So I think that Hilton's pretty safe. And after taking who did I take? Will Fuller. I feel like I've needed a little bit more a safety in the back end, so I figured T.Y. Hilton would be good there.
Callen wants to get a AARP discount with his using his fantasy football roster as his reference point.
Look, I'm in school right now. Any discount I can get on anything would be nice.
There you go. Let me ask you guys a question. This came from our chat. What is the proper way to react after being sniped? And obviously, I think having a clean queue is important, but I feel like the proper way to react, generally throw your phone across the room is probably a good one. Scream into a pillow, or maybe just like break your glass of water. What do we think? Which is the proper way to react after being sniped?
Well, I'm still hurting from Ryan sniping me on A.J. Dillon. That was my plan. I wish I had taken him instead of Mecole Hardman now, but I just like to silently kind of seethe about it, just kind of really boil inside, get that pick out, and then maybe throw something afterwards. That's the strategy I go with.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I usually think of something really mean to say on Twitter. Like if I'm in like an underdog draft and I'm going for like a Titan stack with AJ Brown, Julio, Ryan Tannehill, and someone snipes him like a round ahead of ADP, I'm taking a screenshot of that and putting that guy on blast on Twitter.
Callen, so we've got subtweeting, we have silent seething. What do you do, Callen?
I usually go to throw the phone route and just get frustrated. The only reason I haven't done any of that today is I'm sitting live on a live stream. If this was a normal draft and I was sitting in my room quietly, there may be some stuff on the floor I need to pick up after a draft.
It is also a mock draft. This team does not matter after tonight. Erik, Ryan, I want to ask you about your picks, but Erik, first, I need to ask you because you now have 5 running backs in your roster, only one of which has a solidified role. You could say Giovanni Bernard has a role. We don't know what the volume looks like on that role yet. So what are you going to do in week 1? Like, are you starting Trey Sermon week 1? Are you starting Gio Bernard? What is your plan here?
You got to play the matchups, man. I don't know. We'll see what Trey Sermon looks like week 1. We'll get some more information. We'll see how that clears up. If Tampa Bay's playing a shootout, I like Bernard in shootout type games. But it's one position I have to fill. Darrell Henderson's hurt his thumb or something at this point, so maybe he's out, and maybe Xavier Jones is a starting running back. It's a long way away from the start of the season, Myles. So don't worry about my RB2. It'll work out just fine.
This is why now looking back on the draft, I think I would have rather had drafted like Darrell Henderson, Myles Gaskin in round 4, and then gotten a different wide receiver.
But do you know what they're going to do week 1? Do we really know Darrell Henderson's going to be that good or Myles Gaskin?
I don't know if they're going to be good,
Gaskin's
but I know that they're going to. I know that they're going to play. That's the difference. Is I know that they're at least going to get playing time. So that to me is the concern. I'm totally fine with Pollard, Bernard, Jones there at the end as running backs 3 through 5. I just feel like at this point, I want something a little bit more safe out of these guys. Honestly, I'd feel better about you drafting Gus Edwards who Ryan took, I think Gus Edwards is being massively underdrafted considering how much Baltimore runs. I think he's a lot safer than people think. And I like you going for upside, but I think at some point you got to get safety. Before you defend yourself, because I don't want you to, Ryan, Gus Edwards, fantastic pick. Jacoby Myers, looking at the other wide receivers that went off the board, pretty good pick. I don't know that you needed to draft a wide receiver there, but Gus Edwards, I like him. So what are you seeing in Edwards here that you took him ahead of guys like Xavier Jones, or I don't even know who the other running backs you could have taken. So ahead of Xavier Jones, then what do you see out of Edwards?
Yeah, sure. So we've seen Gus Edwards have a significant role in his offense before. We haven't seen that with Xavier Jones. And I mean, maybe the Rams offense ends up being better for running back scoring fantasy points than the Ravens one does. But I think both of these are good situations. So I'm going to err on the side of the guy that we've seen it before with. And I mean, this could be a lot closer to like a 50-50 split with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards than maybe we're comfortable admitting to ourselves. So I'm really comfortable with Gus Edwards when I'm looking for upside running backs later. That's who I'm going with.
Especially since they really fill two different roles. They're not similar runners at all. So I easily could see the Ravens using both in a good capacity. And Jamal Williams is someone that I'm starting to really come a lot more around on, as it seems more and more likely that Swift's workload is not going to be to the same level as guys that are being drafted up there. I feel like Williams is one of those guys, especially in a PPR league, that you should be able to play as like I don't know, running back 2 on a high injury week, or, I don't know, maybe Eric, you should have drafted Jamal Williams. That's someone you could start week 1. What did you see in Jamal Williams and then Latavius Murray? Is it just having that safety at running back?
A little bit of safety with I'm trying to find an RB2 here after having Alvin Kamara and then going receiver and everything. Javonte Williams is going to play week 1, or will play week 1, but won't get the big workload we're expecting. So you have to kind of mix and match these first few weeks. And like you said, the safety of Jamal Williams, he's going to get the work. I'm okay with that. Latavius Murray, I think he's going to be more involved than we're expecting as well. He may kind of be similar. He may get some goal line touches. So I like that. And also handcuffing Alvin Kamara is never a terrible idea in grabbing him. I like both the guys similarly. So it's just taking running backs late to try and find someone to play at RB2 until Williams gets a breakout. We're all kind of expecting him to.
All right. And now one thing I wanted to make sure, because in a previous mock drafts we had done, we had not included kickers and defense. And I wanted to see, as people out there are drafting kickers and defense, and they're drafting them a lot earlier, by the way. First kicker went off the board here in round 14. First defense went off the board in round 13. Whereas, kickers in, regular leagues have ADP like Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker going in round 11. So 3 rounds earlier is when you see the first kickers going. Defense, you see the first defenses go off the board. Pittsburgh goes at pick 106. The Rams go at, and Buccaneers both go at pick 116. So they're both within the first 10 rounds. It looks like are just waiting till the end of the draft to pick kickers and defense. Ryan, you had one of the first picks here in the final 2 rounds, and you went with a kicker first. Is there a reason why you decided to go for Butker as opposed to, say, like the Rams defense or the Steelers defense?
Yeah, I think we're generally a lot better at predicting who the top few kickers have a chance to be than the top few defenses. I mean, Harrison Butker is locked into the Kansas City Chiefs offense. I mean, there's really no way that he's not seeing some of the best opportunity of any kicker in the league this year. Normally, I wouldn't draft a kicker or a defense. I'm doing it for the purposes of this mock. But you normally could draft a couple of upside running backs or something to see how their role might shake out before week 1, and then most likely drop them right beforehand for a kicker streamer and a defensive streamer. But just for the purposes of the mock, I figured I would go ahead and take Butker there.
Yeah, that's actually what I did in one of my drafts. I did not draft a kicker. I did draft the defense with my last pick, but I specifically went and looked for a defense to stream in the first 3 weeks. I think I went with the Broncos as they opened the season against the Giants. And I think like 3 of the first 4 matchups are like really easy.
Myles, so I'm actually cheating here. Justin Dunbar has an article that will be published this week, but he's looking at best early defensive matchups for early season.
So did you just use your admin privileges to read articles that have not been published yet? Eric,
Absolutely.
I have to throw a penalty on this draft. I'm taking away Najee Harris.
So anyway, Denver Broncos are his third best early season defense. Giants, Jaguars, and Jets first 3 weeks. So that's why I went.
Yeah, there you go. Jaguars probably the only team there that gives me any kind of pause. Giants, I'm not worried about Daniel Jones. Who knows if Kenny Golladay is going to be back? Jets, yeah, okay. I'm not worried about that. But to your point, though, so looking at, for example, Aaron Rader's team, he actually did not draft a defense. So he opted instead to take Joe Burrow in the 14th round and kind of have a little bit of safety there at quarterback and only drafted a kicker. So it's definitely a strategy that people can use to ignore one or both of kicker and defense to take. I don't know if Burrow's the right guy, though. I don't know if that's the right kind of pick to make, because with Josh Allen, is Burrow going to really play in front of Josh Allen at any point? I mean, you're basically just handcuffing your quarterback. If Allen gets hurt, you have Burrow. But I almost wonder if going for a high upside running back or wide receiver wouldn't have been a better choice there, to forego a defense for.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take a backup, and I've got Dak just because there's plenty on the waiver wire. Sleeper actually took away my ability to look at who's left right now, but there are plenty of quarterbacks available. I don't think anyone even took Trey Lance, which is probably terrible, and it shows how late we're drafting quarterbacks here. But there's some talent on the waiver wire, and like I always say, Kirk Cousins is there for you if you need him. So there are startable quarterbacks on waivers. Yeah,
and also Corey, also forgoed a kicker in favor of taking Jameis Winston. So again, I mean, the two teams that did not take a kicker in defense picked a quarterback, which I feel like that's not the direction I would go. I would want to get someone get a running back who, if there's an injury ahead of him, is suddenly interesting. Or actually, I'll tell you what I did, Eric. I picked Michael Gallup, who obviously in this draft went a heck of a lot earlier, and there's no way that I was going to get Gallup there at the end of the draft. Actually, where did Gallup go?
He went 8-11.
Was Michael? Oh, okay, in the 8th round. There he is. So, but in the draft that I was in, Gallup was available in the 14th round. So I was like, well, I'm just going to take him, going with the conversation we had on the Sleepers podcast that he is almost like a handcuff wide receiver. And then if anything happens to CD Lamb or Amari Cooper, like COVID CD, then all of a sudden I have a wide receiver that I feel comfortable starting. By the way, CD Lamb should be fine. We've got 17 days till the start of the regular season. I want to ask about kicker and defense strategy. I know this is riveting stuff, but it is important to people out there who are drafting. So at a certain point in these last 2 rounds, you expect everyone to pick a kicker and a defense, right? Callen, at the point that you're picking, you kind of know there's only 4 picks between your 2 choices. So it doesn't really matter which order you go. But for Eric, there's going to be a lot of picks between your 14th round pick and your 15th round pick. Did that factor in at all? Like, you wanted to make sure you got a solid kicker and you were okay with whatever defenses were available, or vice versa? Like, did you think at all about the fact that there's going to be 5 more teams drafting a kicker and a defense ahead of you?
I pretty much always go kicker because
Eric, you have lost audio. I don't know if your mic got unplugged, but you're not making any sound. So Callen, then only 4 picks between for you, but how would you have felt? Was there any world in which you were going to pick a defense first and then a kicker second?
No, I usually go kicker first. I think defense is
okay. You know what? The audio problem is my end.
Oh.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead, Callen.
Okay, yeah. So defense is the one I usually end up streaming, kind of like what we said of Eric. I don't look as ahead. It may be nice to find the first 3 matchups, but if I can just find one person or good week 1 matchup, like the 49ers in this case, elite defense, but also facing the Lions week 1, and we don't think the Lions are going to be very good. So it's kind of balancing both. It helped that everyone seemed to be going kicker first. I was able to get one of those elite defenses, but generally just kicker is what I'll just plug and keep, and getting Bass in a high-powered Bills offense isn't exactly a bad thing either.
Yeah, and I like kickers. I mean, a lot of what you both said, you don't have to worry about it week to week. You can just plug in your kicker from day one. I like to target kickers that play in domes just because there's nothing worse than trying to figure out weather with a kicker. And defense, I know I'm going to stream defense anyway. I know I'm going to cut them as soon as they play the Chiefs or, whoever's out there. So I know I'm going to turn and burn on defense. So I just want to use the smallest amount of capital as possible. So yeah, I mean, drafting this early, I probably wouldn't have taken a defense normally. But I just kind of wanted to follow through with the mock here and just show, who I'd be targeting. So yeah, I don't know. What do you all think? Looking back on things, Ryan, how do you like this draft overall? Anything you regret? Anything you'd change?
I do like this draft overall. I'm still happy that I went Diggs starting out. There are maybe two mistakes I would point to. I was happy to get Russell Wilson in the 6th round, but knowing that I could have had Trey Lance in the final round makes me maybe not as hot on that. I mean, I like you guys were kind of talking about, we're maybe not so happy about drafting 2 quarterbacks, but I think the time that it makes sense to draft 2 quarterbacks is if one of them is Trey Lance. I mean, going Trey Lance, Kirk Cousins right at the end is really attractive. So maybe missed out on that a little bit by going Wilson earlier. And then we already talked about it, but Dallas Goedert is sticking out like a sore thumb there. I was probably running a little low on time there. It was probably a little bit of a panic draft, and I paid for it ultimately. So yeah, I would have loved Tyler Higbee in the 10th round. I would have loved Gerald Everett for free. And either of those guys I really would have preferred.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same for me with Logan Thomas in the middle of the 8th. There was another 2 rounds before anyone else went. So it's just tough at tight end. Some drafts are all going to be gone by round 7 or 8, and other drafts they'll last till around 10. So yeah, I mean, I can't believe Tanyan was there at 12.6. I was actually going to take him at 12.7. I never draft 2 tight ends, but that was just too far for him to drop. But I got sniped a few times this draft. So coupled with podcasting while doing it, it was a tough draft, but I like it overall.
I would agree with that. I generally, for me, for what I'm looking at, kind of like Myles was saying early, I want to get 2 running backs early. I'm kind of realizing as I'm looking at this team, I like Javonte Williams. I like having him in my running back too, but I'd like the safety. I'm not mad about how I did it because the running backs who were left, I'm good with that strategy, but it kind of cements the idea in my head that I want to try and get 2 running backs when I have the option of doing that. This draft worked out pretty well for not having it, but just my general strategy kind of cements more of the idea that I want to get 2 running backs from the first 4 picks or so, or for 4 rounds.
Yeah.
I like that. Right when I got my audio back, I was hearing Callen say how much he likes my general draft.
Oh, you got your audio back. Shoot.
Yeah, I did, and it works, and I really, again, I'm sure you guys all said nice things about me, but I only heard Callen saying nice things about me. So, but I do want to point out there's only one team or 2 teams that took 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. And I don't know if I like Corey's approach because I don't know that I like Nick Chubb that much. Aaron Jones, fantastic pick. And then Josh Jacobs, not a huge fan, but Aaron Rader's team with Zeke, Eckler, Montgomery all in the first 4 rounds. And then he didn't pick a wide receiver until round 6. But I mean, the wide receivers he still has Odell Beckham, DJ Chark, Jarvis Landry, Hollywood Brown, and then Ruggs, Aguilar, and Traquan Smith. I don't know if those are the wide receivers I would have taken, but I think if you look throughout those rounds of the draft, that you can piece together 3 good wide receivers on a week-to-week basis. And I feel a lot safer about that than, having, for example, Mark Salazar's team where he didn't pick a running back until round 8. Yeah, he has Tyreek, Ridley, and then DJ Moore, Chase Claypool. I mean, those 3 spots plus flex are set, but I don't know who his 2 starting running backs are on any given week, and that concerns me.
I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge that he did not take CeeDee Lamb. I'm very impressed with Mark. So Mark is CeeDee Lamb's #1 fan. So
he probably would have if he picked Ridley in round 2, and then CeeDee Lamb didn't make it back to him. So I mean, you'd have to be CeeDee Lamb's mother to pick CeeDee Lamb over Calvin Ridley. That's kind of how I feel. I'm surprised he didn't pick Zeke, but I think he was very clear that he wanted to go 0 RB, and he really committed to it.
I mean, Tyreek and Ridley it's hard to beat that start. So I can't fault him for that.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you're going to start with 2 wide receivers, it's definitely 2 good wide receivers to start with. But again, I wonder if his lack of production at the 2 running back spots is going to come back to bite him, throughout this season. That's never going to happen because this is a mock draft. Eric, with your draft.
Oh, go ahead. So I said the 0 RB drafters would say that all of these running backs are huge risks. After you get past Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, I mean, we don't know about Saquon. We don't know about Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, is starting to get towards the end of his career. Like, there's just a lot of question marks at running back. So I think most of us who have a weak RB2 would push back that a lot of other teams have weak running backs. They just don't know about it yet. So you draft those receivers early, you get a quarterback early and a tight end, and you just got a lot of solid production, and you just hope you hit on some waiver wire moves. That's kind of my pushback on the running back questions, because I get it. They are big questions, but the season tends to work itself out. And if you're working hard on the waiver wire, you can get there.
All right. Well, so then let me ask you guys about Justin Dunbar's team, because he started with Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift, and Darrell Henderson in the first 4 rounds. And his 3 starting wide receivers are going to be Justin Jefferson, Cortland Sutton, and Tyler Boyd. I know that you're not as high on Cortland Sutton, Eric, but in general, like that team feels solid to me. Like I don't have any concerns about the roster makeup here, especially they were still able to get Kyler Murray in the 5th round and Mike Gesicki in the 10th. So I'm not concerned about the roster makeup of Justin Dunbar's team. Maybe again, Swift and Henderson are question marks, but I don't know. That feels safer to me.
No, and I would have taken Swift there at 3.6 as my RB2 instead of Terry McLaurin. So he was certainly on my radar. And when I took Robert Woods in the 4th, I was debating between him and Darrell Henderson. So I really do like those picks. If you're going to take 3 in the first 4 rounds, I like that strategy from Justin. I can't push back against that draft. There's multiple ways to do this. You can take 2, 3, 4 running backs early on. You just really want to make sure they're the right ones, because it can sink you if you just waste a bunch of capital on kind of those RB dead zone types.
All right. Ryan. Oh no, we already asked you about your draft. Callen, I know you said that you'd wish that you had done something different and gone more running back. So looking back at the draft, what picks would you have changed? Like, would you have picked CEH or Swift instead of AJ Brown? Would you have picked Darrell Henderson or Myles Gaskin instead of Adam Thielen? Like, what actual changes could you have made here to have made you feel better about your team?
I like how it turned out for that. I think this is how I would approach it if I was in the situation. Ideally, in my mind, for how the perfect draft in my mind would be having someone like DeAndre Swift or Clyde Edwards-Helaire fall to me at 3, or if I can't get it at 4, one of the other running backs that got taken earlier. I'm fine with I know you don't like Josh Jacobs. I'm fine with taking Josh Jacobs as my RB2. So if he fell to round 4, so ideally I would rather have had one of the running backs fall. I'm good with pivoting to the wide receiver, but this isn't the ideal draft for me of how, if it worked out in a perfect world, how I'd want it to go.
Yeah, and I mean at the same time, this is a 3 wide receiver draft.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people play in 2 wide receiver leagues, and so we maybe wouldn't have seen this aggressive of going for wide receivers over running backs. We're getting some messages in the chat from someone going by the name of Ray_Dur, and he's saying that Team 10, that's Ray no_Dur, so clearly 2 different people. But he's saying Team 10 won. I like Team 10. I do. I just talked about them. They picked 3 out of the first 4 picks for running backs. They got Josh Allen and Kyle Pitts. And then, I mean, again, I'm not in love with these wide receivers, Beckham, Chark, Landry, and Hollywood Brown, but I like the idea. I want to pivot real quick. There's one player I wanted to ask about earlier, and that was Laviska Shenault being picked in the 7th round. There's been a lot of pushback on DJ Chark and that we should be picking Shenault instead. But I think specifically that Chark is being drafted earlier than we should be drafting a Jacksonville wide receiver, considering we don't know who Trevor Lawrence is going to favor, and that Shenault at his price point is better than Chark. Then again, I say that, and Chenault's ADP is actually 6 picks higher than Chark. So it has shifted in the past few weeks. Do you guys feel that we're overdrafting Shenault and Chark, and maybe should just be taking the second of the 2, or even drafting Marvin Jones, considering we really have no idea how things are going to play out in Jacksonville?
I think Marvin Jones is a useful player. I don't know that he's going to give you one of those difference-making seasons. So that's my main problem with Jones, but he's a good late-round target. I don't think we're overdrafting him. I mean, you're looking at the running backs in that range. Kareem Hunt and James Robinson had just gone. So then we're to the Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon section. So I don't have a problem with that. There's not a lot of receivers I'm seeing other than, like Will Fuller, who I love, that I'd take above. But I honestly, it feels like Chark would have the biggest upside if this works out. If he becomes the number 1, I think he's got some big play potential, and he's kind of got that draft capital that could vault him to a big season, but I just don't feel that confident in it. I think Chenault's going to get a lot of close to the line of scrimmage stuff, which isn't necessarily ideal. And I'm kind of waiting for the coaching staff to use him to the full extent of his abilities. So that's kind of my issue. But I do think there's blow up potential if Trevor Lawrence takes this and runs with it. So I don't mind taking shots on Shenault and Chark, and I have a hard time handicapping them at this point.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just think you're right that Marvin Jones isn't in the same conversation, but using a 7th round pick on Shenault or Chark when Marvin Jones could be Trevor Lawrence's favorite receiver. We don't, that's the thing is just we don't know. And Marvin Jones is a good receiver in his own right. Just in my mind, some of the guys going after, who went after both Shenault and Chark, who are in, at least we understand their situation more. Deebo Samuel, Antonio Brown, Will Fuller all went the round after them. And I think they have a similar upside, and we know what their situation is and their teams. I mean, I guess we don't with Fuller, but I feel like Fuller's safer to project in my opinion.
I do like what Ben did there. I mean, he gets Shenault in round 7 and then Lawrence in round 10. Like, that's an awfully cheap stack right there. So I don't know. That's a good value. I don't know if I would have taken Lawrence when you already have Mahomes, but that's a different story.
Speaking of cheap stacks, what do you think of Matt Dean's Bears stack with Darnell Mooney in round 9 and Justin Fields in round 12? I was trying to figure out what's the cheapest stack you can do. That's pretty cheap there.
I like it. I'm a fan of that. Anytime you're taking Fields or Lance late, I'm a fan of it. I should have done it, but I kind of running back got out of the way, and I just had to take a few there. So I like it.
All right. What lessons did you feel you learned from mock drafting here, especially with having to draft a kicker and a defense? Like, this is like a real full mock draft. What did you learn that you can take back with you to your own drafts? Ryan, we'll start with you because you get all the mock draft practice with all your best ball drafts. What did you take away from this draft?
Yeah, there were 2 things. I mean, number one is that Underdog's ADP has completely broken my brain. I mean, wide receivers and even quarterbacks too, because of the best ball format, go so much earlier on that platform than they are going to in a real draft. So this was a nice little adjustment to just get my brain onto redraft season for managed leagues. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is that your bench is shallower than you think it is. I mean, when I'm doing all these underdog drafts, they're going 18 rounds deep. I'm drafting receivers that we would never even consider drafting in a league with 5 bench spots like this. Like, you really want to make every bench spot count. And I think getting guys like Edwards, Dillon, even Ty Johnson, and I'd even argue Jacoby Myers are ways to maximize those few bench spots that you have.
Yeah, Ty Johnson going that late really seems silly to me, considering how the Jets preseason has been going. I mean, if we're picking Michael Carter in the 8th round in the hopes that he gets the usage, I mean, Ty Johnson has, I think, as much claim to the Jets usage. And I mean, he showed like some pretty good ability last year when he did get the role. So I like those late picks. And you're right. I mean, in your league, your bench is 5 or 6 spots. If you are the team that took a chance on Fields or Lance, you probably have one of those spots, set to a quarterback. Again, same thing if you took 2 tight ends like Justin Dunbar did, taking Erik Smith in the 13th round. So that's only 4 spots you might have for running backs and wide receivers. In a 3 wide receiver league, how many wide receivers do you want on your bench?
I mean, part of it depends on how early you drafted those receivers. So I drafted 3 receivers in the first 4 rounds. So at that point, I'm okay with only carrying 5 receivers total on my roster, 2 on my bench. I mean, if I had done something like Aaron Rader did, where I didn't have any wide receivers in the first 4 rounds, then it makes more sense to be carrying 7 on your team. But I mean, wide receiver 3 is the cheapest and easiest position to fill off of waivers in the first few weeks. So I am not super concerned about only going into week 1 with 5 receivers, because those are the type of guys where we learn a lot more about their role in the first week or 2. So those will be the guys that you might be picking up when you're churning some of these other guys like Ty Johnson, if it doesn't seem like he has much of a role.
And they're also back to the point I made earlier about Fab, they're going to be a lot cheaper because people in the first few weeks, when you go back to previous years waiver wire columns, the first few weeks it's dominated by running backs who had more usage or there was an injury ahead of them. So you're not blowing, 30% of your fab or more, or your number one waiver spot on a wide receiver, those guys are usually a little bit easier to acquire. Costs less in season capital, whether that's your waiver wire spot or fab. Callen, what did you learn from this mock draft?
I like what Ryan said about making sure your bench spots count and having that upside. I think that's maybe something that, looking back on the draft, maybe getting a little more upside on my bench. I like T.Y. Hilton, but maybe I should have gone with Terrace Marshall, like the next pick, because I had those elite 3 wide receivers to start. Maybe go with a bit more upside at the wide receiver with the start that I had. So that's a good thing, is making those things count and getting some upside on your bench as well. But also being amendable with your strategy. And I think this one quick, like I said, I like to get the 2-2 start with 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. But then with the board, being able to pivot and be okay going with it and figuring out how to adjust and getting those running backs. So really taught me how to be amendable and how to take the strategy, just crumble it up, throw out the window, and adjust on the fly. So that was a big step or big thing in this draft for me.
There you go. And I wanted to recap your teams before we talk. So sorry about that with Ryan, but Callen's team, Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Kamara and some combination of Javonte Williams / James Robinson starting at running back, AJ Brown. I was about to say Antonio Brown. AJ Brown, Keenan Allen, Adam Thielen at wide receiver. I assume after week 1, Will Fuller will be your flex, and then a bench. Tyler Higbee at tight end, and then a bench of David Johnson, Jamal Williams, Latavius Murray, and T.Y. Hilton. Ryan drafted Russell Wilson at quarterback. I'm going to be starting Gibson and Travis Etienne at running back, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, Antonio Brown probably at flex, Dallas Goedert at tight end, and then a lot of running backs on your bench: Kenyon Drake, A.J. Dillon, Gus Edwards, and Ty Johnson, who I like all of those running backs. I feel like you were drafting off of my rankings there. And then Jacoby Myers as your bench wide receiver. Eric, before I get your final thoughts and what you learned, Eric's team, everyone started the same, by the way, 3 wide receivers in the first 4 rounds. But Eric getting Dak Prescott at quarterback, Najee Harris, and then Trey Sermon as his starting running backs in air quotes there, because no one knows what's going to happen with Trey Sermon at the start of the season. Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin, Robert Woods as your starting wide receivers, Robbie Anderson, who I like Robbie Anderson a lot as your flex, Logan Thomas at tight end, and then a bench of all upside plays, or almost all upside plays: Mecole Hardman, Tony Pollard, and Xavier Jones, with old man Gio Bernard, and longest Giants tenured player Sterling Shepard as your backup wide receiver. Still sounds weird. I feel like Shepard hasn't been around that long, but he's been around for like 6 years now. Eric, what did you learn from this mock draft? What would you have done differently?
Yeah, so I was really happy with the first 8 rounds, getting 4 really good receivers, 2 running backs that I like, even though Myles doesn't like them, and then Logan Thomas. I would say when I took Robert Woods in the 4th, I probably should have just taken Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson instead of taking Dak Prescott in the 5th, and then I could have taken the receiver that was there. I'm still trying to adjust to taking these quarterbacks earlier, and taking one in the 4th round just feels wrong. But the upside for Lamar there, who I would have taken, is bigger than Dak Prescott's. So, but other than that, my problems with my draft started in the 9th round. That was when Zach Moss got picked right before me at running back, and I took Mecole Hardman. I'm fine with that pick, but what I should have done is taken A.J. Dillon. That's basically who I was waiting for to get on the way back, and Ryan beat me to him. I think that's one of those spots where you got to know who you're drafting against and throw ADP out the window a little bit and take the players you want, because he's just the biggest upside bench stash that's out there, in my opinion, as far as the running back goes. And so I would have rather had him instead of Mecole Hardman and taken a receiver. And that kind of chain reaction made me take Tony Pollard, Giovanni Bernard, and Xavier Jones there just to throw some bodies at the position there. So that was my biggest mistake, was drafting Mecole Hardman. I should have taken A.J. Dillon, but I mean, that happens sometimes. It's really tough to predict where A.J. Dillon's going to go in a draft. So other than that, I like it, and I'll figure out running back as we go.
All right, so let me ask you, just so we can kind of do this little exercise. Let's say you took Lamar Jackson in round 4 instead of Robert Woods. So you're not going to take Dak, obviously, in round 5. Which of the wide receivers would you have taken right after you picked Dak? Was Chase Claypool, Jamar Chase, Kenny Golladay, Jerry Jeudy? Would you have taken one of those, or is it someone that kept on falling even after that?
No, I think Claypool would have been next up on my board right there. Chase, I need to drop a little bit in my rankings so he falls below him. So it would have been Claypool. I really like Claypool, and I haven't been drafting him enough. So I would have been really happy with him as my wide receiver 3. And then I have Robbie Anderson kind of backing him up if he doesn't come around right away. So it would have been Claypool there.
All right, and then the same exercise, but with round 9. If you take AJ Dillon there instead of Mecole Hardman, you say that that kind of led you down the path of taking Pollard, Bernard, and Jones. But just focusing on the 10th round, who would you have taken instead of Tony Pollard had you had AJ Dillon as your 3rd running back?
Yeah, I would not have taken a running back there. If I had taken Dillon, I would have waited on Bernard probably the next round. So I think I'd probably looking at like Russell Gage there. Maybe Hardman even makes it back. I'm not sure where people were targeting him, but I think it'd be Hardman, Gage, Rondale Moore. He's one I'm interested in. So those would have been some I'm looking at there in round 10.
Do you guys think that Erik made Do you guys think that Erik made a mistake there with the picks that he made? Would you, Ryan, I'll start with you. Would you have done Lamar in the 4th and Claypool in the 5th versus Woods and Prescott, and then Dillon and we'll say Russell Gage instead of Hardman and Pollard?
So with the 4th and 5th round, I really like Robert Woods a lot more than I like Chase Claypool. I do think Claypool has a lot of upside. I'm not so sure that the Steelers are going to continue their high volume passing like they have in the last couple of years. So I would really stick with Woods and Prescott over Lamar and Claypool there. But for the other one, I've always been out on Mecole Hardman. He's really just never done anything at any level of football since he's been in college to make me think he can be a reliable fantasy producer. So yeah, I would have skipped out on Hardman and gone AJ Dillon there.
All right, Callen, what about you?
I'm going to agree with Ryan there. I really like Robert Woods. He would have been my pick if he came to me instead of Adam Thielen. So I like him and Prescott. I'm not usually looking quarterback at round 4, so that's maybe just a personal thing, but so I was good at 5. And then I would have gone AJ Dillon and Russell Gage, and Gage is another kind of guy I like in the later rounds that I wouldn't have minded on this team. And Mecole Hardman's still good, but having AJ Dillon would have been good. So I probably would have done the same thing Ryan said.
Okay. All right. Last things. I want you guys to give yourself a grade on this draft. Erik, how would you grade yourself here?
I'll give myself like a B-. Honestly, I've had a lot of drafts I've liked more than this one. So getting sniped on a few players put me back a few spots. I'll definitely take this into a season, but I've had drafts where I come out of it a lot more excited. So if you could let me have, a couple of these players like Zach Moss maybe added in, a couple of snipes, then I'll give myself an A-. But no, B-.
If I could have had guys that weren't available to me on my picks, give me an A-. I like that. I mean, if I could have just drafted Travis Kelce in the 4th round, A+, absolutely. Ryan, how would you grade your draft?
Yeah, I was also going to say I'd give myself a B-. I really think that the second half of my draft was pretty strong. I really like what I did with my bench. But that Dallas Goedert pick is just going to be sticking out like a sore thumb. I mean, I maybe could have gone Jerry Jeudy over Wilson and probably still gotten Wilson there in the 7th round. So I'd probably like my team a lot more if I had done that. So, but like we said, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
There's no way you're getting Wilson because Herbert, Rodgers, and Hurts all went after you pick Wilson before your next pick. You might have been looking at the draft at the wrong turn there.
So I got the turns confused, but yeah, I still the Dallas Goedert pick is just a big black mark there.
I mean, even if you had picked Goddard 2 rounds later, because you maybe wouldn't have had Goddard, but Fant would have been on the board there. Higbee would have been on the board there. So you definitely had some tight end options available to you just 2 rounds later. And you'd even mentioned, some of the other tight ends, what Gerald Everett for free, someone you could add really late. Callen, give yourself a grade here.
I'm going to change it up. I'll give myself just a flat B instead of a B-.
Huge change up.
Yep, exactly. The way I pivoted for the going wide receivers in the first 3 rounds, which is something not the first 3 rounds, the next 3 rounds, is not something I normally do, but I like how it turned out. There's some picks I probably would have changed. I would have liked to get not as snipe, but for a strategy that I don't usually do as much, I kind of like how this team turned out, but there's 1 or 2 picks that are things I would do a slightly different. So I'll go B. I'm happy if I'll take into a season, but there's some things I would have liked to do instead. Looking back.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here tonight. Hopefully you're able to take this mock draft and apply it to your drafts as I know draft season's coming up. So, understand, how to draft, with different position. We made sure to have both, Callen, Erik, and Ryan all kind of spread out throughout the draft to kind of see what drafting from different positions look like, what different strategies you can take and whatnot throughout your draft to kind of help you win your drafts and get started on your season on the right foot. But yeah, that'll do it for us here tonight. You can always ask us follow-up questions on our Twitter at the QB list, or in our Discord. If you join PL Plus, you can get access to our Discord and ask us all the questions that you like about all the dumb picks that everyone made tonight. So, but we will see you guys next time. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.